Community Foundation, and I'm going to be talking about what we're doing at the Community Foundation and investing in all sorts of social enterprises in Utah and beyond.
Let me keep this one distracted, Pete.
Okay. So he might add as we talk, and also I see some very familiar faces here as well, people that I work with at the Community Foundation. So it's really nice to see some people who are already familiar with what we do. And then we also have another board member here who was brainchild of one of the topics that I'm really going to focus on in my presentation, talking about our Social Investors Forum. So anyway, thank you for having me here. Actually, just want to say, you know, Jeremy talked about the Community Foundation. He founded it along with Greg Warnock and Fraser Nelson, and really the vision was to be a driving force for good in Utah today and for forever. And really, I mean, I think he teed it up well, talking about there were some gaps in philanthropy, things were happening, and the philanthropic landscape here in Utah is somewhat unique, as all of you realize, and especially back in 2008. You know, we have private foundations. There are only 12 private foundations with assets over $25 million. We have only one Fortune 500 company. And although you hear reports all over that Utah is the most philanthropic state, and that individuals in Utah are more philanthropic than ever, we all know that a lot of that goes back to tithing and is for religious purposes, which is really great. But beyond that, there are, you know, the landscape beyond that. The generosity, the giving is actually smaller than it is perceived in a lot of the reports. And also the economy here in Utah is really driven by entrepreneurs and small businesses, and that's entrepreneurs and small businesses have historically been pretty unfamiliar with the nonprofit sector. And so part of the Community Foundation was to make sure that those who are doing good work to solve social issues were able to be connected with those who had the means, those who wanted to make a difference and wanted to make an impact. And the Community Foundation could really bring them together and make sure that those meaningful connections were made, and make sure that resources were invested and deployed in ways that would make the biggest impact possible. And so that's really what we were all about. And so really early on, the Community Foundation focused on working with entrepreneurs and small business owners, CEOs, to really educate them. And what we did is we partnered with organizations like EY. We worked on speed mentoring events, bringing in people who had mentor capital and connecting them with nonprofits. Because in our early days, we didn't have much capital to speak of. We didn't manage assets of our philanthropists, so we had to be creative, and we had to look at, as we're growing, ways that we can make a difference for those all throughout our state and beyond. Just gonna grab a little water. Sorry, guys. So as we continue to grow, I have water. So as we continue to grow, we also created donor advised funds. So we manage philanthropic assets for some donors. And that has been what really the way that we have grown the most in the Community Foundation since we were established in 2008. And a donor advised fund can actually help, we facilitate philanthropy for donors, for philanthropists, and one way that we can facilitate that philanthropy is through impact investing, through program-related investments, through mission-related investments. So that's been a really nice way that we have been able to make a difference as well through the community, through Utah. But one really unique thing too that we have done as we started growing in assets and bringing some qualified investors, people who had resources, is we wanted to build social enterprises and invest in for-profit, nonprofit, hybrid organizations in Utah in unique ways. And so with carrying on from how we were started and how we wanted to grow into the future, we created our Social Investors Forum. And it came about in actually November of 2013. The board sat around a table and said, you know what, we're unique, we're innovative, we need to start deploying grants or deploying our capital in ways that is unique as well. And so what we did is we put together a one-page call for investments, much like angel investing, much like very, very different than traditional philanthropy. And with that, we actually released the call for investments and had nonprofit and other organizations fill out the page and tell us what were they doing that was unique. What were they doing? What was actually? What were they doing to? What was their competitive edge? What were they doing to solve issues? And what were they doing to make sure that they were sustainable? And what set them apart from other organizations that were doing that? And we gathered together a lot of the entrepreneurs, qualified investors who we've been working with for years, as well as others. We've actually built this group, which is now known as Venture Philanthropy Utah. And this group gets together and helps us to look at these one-page investments and see which organizations are working towards good, doing social good in innovative ways and are worthy of an investment. So our very first one, which was held in February of 2014, so not very long ago, we had 150 call for investments returned to us, and our investors looked at them, and there were a lot of projects that were just not worthy of investments. And what they did is they narrowed it down, and ultimately 8 organizations pitched their projects, pitched what they thought were worthy investments to the committee, the investment committee. And out of that day, it was a very Shark Tank style pitching. So a very unique way to in the philanthropic sector to ask for philanthropic investments. What we did was from there, the committee decided and recommended that we make investments into social enterprises. So that first year, we gave $20,000 to the Green Urban Lunchbox and the Salt Lake City Bicycle Collective, both for their social enterprises that they were engaging in. Those investments made huge differences, and just a little over a year later, well, almost 2 years later, they have taken their projects and they've scaled them. In fact, the Salt Lake Bicycle Collective, their investment was for their Earn a Bike program, where they actually, people would come in and they would work on bikes and they would earn, they would fix bikes to earn their own, to pay for their own bike. And it was actually a revenue generating system within their organization, which allowed the nonprofit organization to not be so dependent on just regular philanthropic gifts. It was a different way of giving and a different way that this organization was able to receive investments. So now they've opened up a second location in Ogden, Utah. So they are really able to take what they did not very long ago and scale it. Since then, we have held that Social Investors Forum. We hold it twice annually. So we've had 3 Investors Forums. We have our 4th coming up on December 1st, and we have had some great success so far. In the one sheeter, you'll see a total of $331,000 has been awarded through the 3 Social Investors Forums started so far, and that is through just philanthropic investments as well as loans. And the investment committee, all the qualified investors who get together and make recommendations through this event and through this forum, they're really creative, and they look to make recommendations of, oh, are we going to do a loan? Is this the capital, how much capital you do need? Or do you need something else? What are they missing in their business plan? Do they have a sustainability model? Are they going to be able to earn additional income and revenue as they go on and not be so vulnerable or dependent on philanthropic dollars like traditional nonprofits are? So it's been very successful. Just so you can see some of the target areas that we invest in through the Social Investors Forum so far: job creation, economic development, child welfare, education, and technology. Some of the organizations that are now part of our portfolio organizations that have received investments through the forum are listed here. And you can see that we're just continuing to grow. And it's been really, really effective. What's been interesting is that this project has really helped funders. It really has. it helps funders leverage their giving for a greater impact. Because just anybody can give to the Green Urban Lunchbox or the Salt Lake City Bicycle Collective. But together, we're able to make a larger impact. And this is how we're able to do it through the Community Foundation and the Social Investors Forum. Another thing that's been really nice is funders are able to meet with other funders. There are conversations that happen throughout this event, throughout this process, where people who are interested in one certain topic or area, they can work together to, off on the side or through the Social Investors Forum, invest in organizations, nonprofits, or projects that are really meaningful to them. What's really interesting too is sometimes we're not able to, I told you the very first one that we held in 2014, February, we had 8 finalists pitch their projects. And what happened is only 2 of those received investments. But interestingly, somebody who was on one of the qualified investors actually heard one of the finalists speak and their project, but it didn't get funded, but it resonated with him. And he said, you know what, I need to look into this a little bit. I need to find out what's going on. And so there was actually an opportunity outside of that event. The connection was made there. They got together and actually made an investment. In fact, it was featured in Forbes today. There's an article about it, and it's actually one of our donor advisors made a donation to an organization, and they've had an ongoing relationship. Very much like Jeremy said with families and how you include multiple generations in giving, and what a younger generation wants is they want to make an investment that's really impactful. One that is not just to write a check, but a relationship over time. So that one gift that happened from this donor outside of the Social Investors Forum has now turned into multiple gifts, and they're increasing and a strong relationship moving forward. So that, in addition to the investments that are made through the Community Foundation, having an opportunity to make connections outside and have syndication is really important to us too. We are just as excited about that as well. And then of course, this opportunity, this event, this Venture Philanthropy Utah and this Social Investors Forum really helps to facilitate a cohesive group of individuals that are investing in the future of Utah. Looking and saying, we're taking these organizations who are doing really innovative work, looking at some of our most important social issues right now that are going on, and they aren't afraid to try different and unique ways to tackle those issues, and we aren't afraid to invest in those. Now, whether they completely succeed or fail, we want them to succeed. We're willing to make an investment and willing to, in addition, give some mentor capital along the way to make sure that they have all that they need to be successful. So that's kind of in Utah. We really want, the Community Foundation of Utah, our heart is in Utah. Now we give beyond Utah as well, and we help to facilitate impact investing out beyond Utah. But with this Social Investors Forum, really it's about creating a sector that is working so hard to solve social issues and making sure that those people who are doing innovative work have the resources that they need. And those who have the resources, we want to bring them to the table. We want to connect them. We want to make matches where they need to. A lot of people who have resources, you have them, but you don't necessarily have the means, the resources, the time, the energy to go and research all the organizations who are doing good work, which there are thousands of great organizations here across our state, so many great nonprofits. But what's so interesting is if you are interested in impact investing and investing in unique ways, the Social Investors Forum and Venture Philanthropy Utah offer you a way to do that, a way to make a difference right now and into the future on some of our state's most pressing issues. So that's really what I wanted to talk about. I'll answer questions about that, but I did want to talk about Pay for Success. Kurt, you asked me to touch on that. So one of the things that we also do at the Community Foundation, we want to look for, again, innovative, different ways that we can work to solve social issues throughout our state. And many of you have probably heard about the Social Impact Bond, Pay for Success. And really it's paying for successful outcomes for those in the nonprofit sector who are really working on the best way to address some of our state's most pressing issues. So it's a way to connect funders with those who are doing the best, really, really the best work. And the Community Foundation is playing a unique role in this whole model. And we are the financial and legal intermediary. So we are not, although we have wisdom and we like to give our 2 cents everywhere, when we can, but our real role is to make sure that the financial transactions are taking place between funders who want to invest in the projects. There are 3 Pay for Success projects that we'll get into in just a little bit, so I'll let Jeremy do that. But what we do is we make sure that everything is done in a legally appropriate way, and we make sure that all of the checks and all of the transactions are done appropriately as well. So we're very administrative in that project. Anyway, that's really what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to make sure I had time to answer any questions. Are there any questions about Social Investors Forum, donor advised funds, impact investing, or even Pay for Success?
Let me add one thing before we field questions. So our relation, you may wonder, what is the relationship between Penn and the Community Foundation? So a lot of the things that Catherine has just described about impact investing and their facilitation of it is something that Penn also does with regard to for-profits and nonprofits as well. So we're also trying to match funders with projects, as we'll talk about in just a moment. But there's no competition between people that are trying to find projects and find funders, because there's not enough of both, right? So we're trying to build a bigger pie together here in Utah around impact investing, and we're partnering to do that. Mm-hmm. And so we actually are fiscally sponsored by the Community Foundation. When you contribute to Penn, you contribute first to the Community Foundation, who transfers that to us. So they've been a legal intermediary for us as well. We chose the Community Foundation to be our sponsor because of their vision around impact investing, because they do get it better than most community foundations. We tried to also partner with some other community foundations in the area who did not fully really understand impact investing as well as the Community Foundation of Utah. So we're pleased to be involved with you, and hopefully we're going to help you bring more funders to these great projects that you're identifying. Yeah. And in that regard, did you describe the date of your next social impact?
I did not. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you.
It is on the form here, and this is, I do want to point out, December 1st. We are going to be holding it it's at the Draw at Westminster College, and we are still, right now, we actually have received all of our the call for investments went out. We received 31 requests back. So right now, we are in the middle of going through and looking through all of the one-page applications. And so if you are interested in becoming a qualified investor, if you are interested in learning more about Utah Venture Philanthropy or being a part of the Social Investors Forum, both even just attending, it is open to the public as well. So you can go and just attend and see what it's all about. Or if you're interested in being involved in a larger level, we would love to talk to you here. I also put on this paper the contact information for Tony Mastracci. He is our newest staff member at the Community Foundation, and he is in charge of the Social Investors Forum. And he is really facilitating this whole process. And so if this is something that's interesting to you, we'd love to talk to you about it some more. Mm-hmm.
One other side, sorry.
No.
Did you have a question in the back?
There was just somebody else.
Mm-hmm. On your target areas for investment, how is that determined? How do you prioritize the areas that you're interested in?
It's really not been prioritized up to this point. What we've done is we've opened up. We have not, when we put the call for investments out, we have not prioritized certain issues say, women's issues or education. We haven't said that we're looking for that. What we have done is looked at, we've looked at the application to see, does this organization look at an innovative way to solve a social issue? And do they have a plan for sustainability, financial sustainability for the future? Do they have great management? Are they doing something do they have a competitive edge? So we're looking at really that side of it. That's really the priority. And then when they pitch, our target areas have been really where the investments have bubbled up with the organizations who fit the mold of really the innovation and the sustainability model. Now, in the future, we may have a call for investments that's around a specific area that Venture Philanthropy Utah does define as the priority, and that has been talked about. Up to this point, it's just been an open process.
Those priorities can be driven by the investor, I suppose, or the funder?
Potentially.
Potentially?
Potentially, yeah. It actually is the group as a whole talking about, what the priorities are and the recommendations. But I do want to say one thing too. Ultimately, the investments that are made through this are approved by the board of the Community Foundation of Utah. So what happens is Venture Philanthropy Utah makes the recommendations, and then it's ultimately approved by the board, which up to this point has not changed from the recommendations, but the board ultimately has the final say. Yeah, Jeremy, you got to add to it?
Sorry, Kevin, if I can add in.
Yes, please.
Colorado's doing Colorado Impact Day this March, and they have several groups of funders that have identified specific target areas that they're going to use, so that is a model as well. And they, credit to Catherine and her team, they modeled their whole program on what we're doing at the Community Foundation. So, we really are leaders in this field, and they're modeling a program. So I think we might get there, but to Catherine's point, very good legal disclaimer, she keeps me out of trouble. Anything that comes out of the Community Foundation is technically approved by the board, but we have yet to, we have denied, I think, one donor advice grant.
Yeah. We have talked to some funders, though, who have said they would like to either invest or syndicate or be a part of this, but they do have very focused issues, and so it has become more and more of, there might be some just more strategic planning as far as what forums and donors
I'm
are
acquainted with
involved.
the Santa Barbara Foundation, and I know that that's an issue, and it seems more and more we're seeing those kinds of specific intents.
Yeah.
Do I see Jeremy Keelan? Yeah, I don't. So we can have a little bit more time. Let me add
Yes,
at least two more things about the Community Foundation. So with the Community Foundation, to your point, Chuck, or to your question, the question of can the donor drive where the investments go? Obviously in a collaborative, it's the collaborative that decides that. But in your individual donor advised fund, you can recommend to them investments. And we've had at least 2 of our members who have donor advised funds at the Community Foundation who have made impact investments from their donor advised fund to an impact investment that they recommended to the Community Foundation, and it was ultimately approved by the board.
And you vet them and then
Right. But not every board, as you know, I don't know about Santa Barbara, but not every Community Foundation board, as you know, is that understanding of impact investing, and it's not as flexible as the Utah Community Foundation has been, or the Community Foundation of Utah. So again, and one other point is the Venture Philanthropy Utah concept. So how many of you don't know what the term venture philanthropy means? Let's raise it the other way. How many of you know what it means? Okay. So venture philanthropy is a concept that basically is very similar to impact investing, but it's giving to a nonprofit rather than lending or investing in them. So it's investing, the term gets kind of convoluted. So good to have you, Jeremy.
Thank you.
We'll have you come up right in just a second.
Okay.
So the Community Foundation, when they talk about venture philanthropy, traditionally you're talking about gifts that have a venture style of giving, meaning you're more involved, it's higher due diligence, higher involvement, right? Is that
Yeah, I
when
mean,
you,
it's-
when you talk about the term venture philanthropy?
yes.
Okay, and as the slide here says, PEN is an impact investing in social venture partners, which practices venture philanthropy. The group that we're the Utah chapter of, Social Venture Partners, is an international group that focuses on venture philanthropy. So we're unique in that network. We're the only chapter within the 30 chapters of SVP that focuses strictly on impact investing. And the differences is one is giving, the other is actually lending or doing equity investments in for-profits. So, but as I said, the Community Foundation facilitates that as well. So, yes,
I
Brett.
think one more comment on venture philanthropy. The notion of venture philanthropy is that it should follow the same patterns as existing venture capital. So the qualifications that the philanthropist looks for in the potential giftee are aligned with what you would look for in an early stage startup that you're looking to invest in for a return. So rather than just making a gift or something like that with no expectations on the back end, there is some expectation of accountability and metrics that go along with showing that you're having the impact that you profess.
So social metrics rather than the financial return.
And we're ambivalent on that. The
Okay.
financial return could actually be a very viable metric if it's that you're reaching that sustainability that.
What I mean financial return, I mean back to the investor.
Right.
Right.
And actually, at some point, it could involve that.
In which case it becomes impact investing in our definition of that. Yeah, okay.
And
Thank
I
you, Brent.
he has some great input on that, Brent does, because actually, he was very instrumental in creating the Social Investors Forum, and this was really part of his brainchild, so putting you on the spot a little bit here, Brent.
So our strong opinions, to say the least.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Brent, for actually clarifying that.
One-
Okay, we need to
Yeah.
move on this.
We
Go
will
ahead.
move on. I just wanted to say as well, because we were talking about impact investing and the just flexibility that the Community Foundation of Utah offers. We actually have had people who have donor advised funds with other community foundations that don't facilitate impact investing, actually make donations from their donor advised fund at another community foundation to the Community Foundation of Utah, create a donor advised fund at the Community Foundation of Utah, and do impact investing out of that fund. So we are very flexible, and we also have really great legal counsel to make sure that everything that we do is appropriate and legal. And what we like to do are look at unique ways of doing things. And so if people come to us and say, I have this idea and I want to make a difference, but it's kind of out there, that really excites us, and we want to talk about it and we want to explore it. Because if there's a legal and appropriate way to do it, and the end result is making a better community and better outcomes, then we will definitely want to explore it. So that's one of the really neat things about it too. So just wanted to add that.
And we share the same legal counsel, Brent. So we have Brent Anderson in the back, who is also vice chairman of the.
That just me as Kurt McConkie.
Kurt McConkie. Thank you.
We're a team.
Okay, thank you very much, Catherine.
Thank you, guys.